Stephanie, Adrien, welcome, and thank you for making some time for lockdown generation of work. Great to have you here. So you both work in the HR team of Improbable, which is a tech company operating in the gaming industry. And today we're going to talk about the new world of work, which is something I believe that is high on the agenda at Improbable. So it would be great to get your insights and understand a bit more about what it is exactly and how it what it means for younger people. But maybe we can start in the beginning or at the beginning, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the company, about Improbable, what you guys do there, what the company does, and why it's such a great company to work there, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So Improbable was formed after actually two of our founders met at a dissertation review in Cambridge. So they both discovered that they have this shared love of games and virtual worlds. So Improbable was created around that. And since then, we've created, among other things, an IMS platform, which is a cloud development environment. So this provides networking and hosting and online services tools for both developing and operating online multiplayer games. And we're also working to bring innovative and highly relevant technology from the games industry and then apply it to applications outside games as well. So we have a defense arm of the business. So that's looking at using our technology to create highly detailed simulations for both training and modeling purposes. And Improbable, since its conception, is now a global company. So we have just over 800 people working for us, and a little over half of those are based in London and the rest are global.
Okay, great. And what's your role? What do you do on a daily basis for the company?
Sure. So my role is the lead people partner for our games technical unit. So this is managing a small team and working primarily with our CTO. And we operate a HR business partnering model, which means that each business area has their own designated people partner or small people partner team. And a people partner basically supports their business unit on a vast range of things. So some of these include ensuring a healthy culture or partnering with leadership on strategy, monitoring our employee engagement, and then, of course, responding to any day-to-day people issues that crop up as well.
Okay, so you're looking after the people. That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Adrien, is there something you want to, maybe you can introduce us a little bit about your role and what you're doing at Improbable?
Yeah, sounds good. So thanks for I guess the intro, so I joined Improbable about seven and a bit years ago. I'm currently covering for a sort of maternity leave as interim sort of head of recruiting, head of talent, and that involves essentially leading our recruitment globally, so across sort of North America and EMEA sort of predominantly, but also includes working with our teams in APAC as well. So we're aligned similarly as sort of Stephanie sort of highlighted by business units. We do run sort of an operating model based on sort of agile principles, and as part of the overall people operations function. And so we work with our corporate functions essentially to strategically fill sort of capability and capacity gaps across the company. And the aim is really to provide a great recruiting experience for sort of all audiences involved. So that's not just necessarily the candidates and the future employees themselves, because some of those candidates are also potential customers in the form of game developers or even, working in the defense space, in the future, but also, making sure that hiring managers, interviewers, people partners, everybody has a positive experience, within hiring for Improbable. So that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I had several conversations in the past as well with HR leaders about the interview process and about that it's more candidate focused nowadays more than it was several years ago. So that's positive that you guys also you also work towards that basically. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually something that we sort of heavily invested in quite early on. Like our founders sort of actually hired myself and someone else as recruiters before even having sort of marketing teams or HR teams. So we're sort of figuring it out over time. But so it's something that we've invested in over, not just HR talent, operations. It's something that really the company has sort of got behind, over time, which is great, and allows us to support our people.
Yeah, Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely a very important topic as well. But now about the topic itself that we're going to talk about today. So the new world of work. So it's great that you guys are here. We can have a chat about that because you told me before that it's something that you guys work on. Let's say those new trends basically that we can describe as the new world of work. So I think the Corona crisis has really accelerated all that. So maybe can you guys explain a bit more about what exactly do we understand under the new world of work? What is it basically for our viewers, that they have a good grasp or understanding of what this means?
Yeah, definitely. So like you say, COVID-19 has changed the world dramatically, and how we work is definitely one of those areas. And as you mentioned, it's accelerated changes for a lot of companies, but for others, it's thrown them into ways of working that they never would have considered before as well. So for a lot of people, that's obviously meant working from home, working remotely, interviewing remotely, starting new jobs remotely. And sadly, for some people as well, it's been not being able to work at all, whether they've been furloughed or whether they've unfortunately lost their employment through the crisis. So I think as employees as well, we are now also much more aware of things like our physical workspace than ever before. So if you're working from home, for many people, that means trying to separate your physical home workspace to your your everyday home life, and there's all sorts of challenges in there for employees as well. I think in terms of the new world of work, we're starting to see people either getting back to work a little bit more or actually settling into a steady state. So for example, at Improbable, we all started working remotely pretty much straight away. And then different offices in different locations have obviously been responding to their own countries' situation, where they are with the pandemic. So we have offices across the globe. So some of our offices are still completely remote. Others are able to go into the office a bit more, depending on their specific country. So I think in general, it's definitely changed the way we think about office space. It's changed the way we think about how we do our jobs. And for many jobs, it has proven that being in an office is not essential for that role in order to be completed successfully. So that's a lot more demand now for flexibility, working from homes, and even sort of working fully remotely for some people as well. So I think for many companies, especially like us in the technology industry, it is a big shift.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I think especially in your industry, technology, coding, etc., maybe the physical office or where people are is maybe less relevant than in other industries. But how do your employees or the people that work for Improbable, how do they respond to this change? Is everybody able to cope with that, or do you still have people saying, "No, I prefer to come to the office because I need to have the contact with my colleagues," or also for working together, it might be more challenging for some people if they don't have people around them to ask questions or to work together with? What's the general response, I would say, in the office to this new rule, new trend?
I think in general, our workforce has been amazingly adaptable with suddenly having to work from home. We were a company before that where we did have work from home days, but we weren't a remote based company by any means. So I think our employees have really adapted to that change amazingly well. They've found new ways to communicate, new ways to organize their time. I think something that has been a challenge for many people, not just Improbable employees, but for a lot of people generally in the pandemic, has been, how do I maintain my work-life balance? How do I look after my well-being when all of a sudden my home is also my workspace? So I think that's something that has been challenging for many people. So we've obviously tried to keep as close to our employees as possible. So we know if anyone's struggling, that we can offer them help. We can be thinking about how we best support them. I think moving back to the office at some point, as we start to see restrictions getting lifted, we will see with different responses from different employees. And I think, again, it's going to be the same for lots of companies. You get some people that can't wait to get back in and they want to see their teammates and they want to whiteboard. And you get some people that actually have adapted to working from home so much that that's where they want to stay. So we're still working on what that looks like for individual employees, but we're trying to obviously make sure we listen and take everybody's personal circumstances and the way that they work best into consideration for them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And maybe a question for Adrien. So how does that reflect in the recruitment process? I mean, do you have now, when you're talking to new people, potential candidates or potential employees, candidates, do people demand more that they are able to work from home, or what is the feedback you're getting there from candidates?
I think it's mixed, as Stephanie said, in the sense that, you know, it's hard to really cater for everyone, but I think everybody understands in this day and today that why we are working remotely. You know, we have got a sort of a phased approach and strategy towards, you know, the roadmap to enabling people to be able to work from home, and that's also partly, you know, depending on the government guidelines. We've also sent around surveys to employees internally, so people, at least, even if they want to be in you know, in the office full time, they understand that there is a roadmap towards achieving that. And those that want to, you know, be fully remote, we've adapted ourselves to, for certain roles, depending on, you know, things like, you know, security access, you know, do you need to be in the office or not? You know, we've sort of tried to tier it into different ways so that ultimately, you know, we identify the roles that can be done fully remotely. For example, you know, recruiting is something that I would say, you know, with a phone and a laptop and some internet, you know, we're really able to do our jobs remotely much easier than, for example, someone working in the office as a, you know, managing the actual office itself, like a receptionist, or someone working actually in facilities who need that sort of access. So it really depends on the type of requisition that we're really working, and so we work closely with hiring managers to identify that up front.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the candidates themselves? Do they ask about, you know, is this a remote role? Is this, because I hear more and more now, also from other people, that obviously, yes, we have to work from home because of COVID, but then after a while, restrictions, as you said, Stephanie, will be lifted, so people have to come to the office again, or at least for a few days a week. But I'm hearing more and more about candidates who actually only want to work remote, or who explicitly are looking for jobs that they can work from home, where they can work from home. So I'm just wondering if what is your view on this? What is your feedback on this? Do you talk to candidates that also you know, demand this, let's say, or is it not really the case?
Yeah, I guess our sort of employee engagement starts with recruiting, right? Because they're ultimately future employees, and so it's not that, you know, a candidate isn't going to be successful, that we shouldn't give them the same level of transparency as a current employee in the business. So we try and be as open as possible with them about what the plan is, what the limitations are of the role. For example, if they do choose to go remote and it is a possibility, you know, what are the pros and cons? You know, where are they based? Because there's also we do have an approach internally where we have fully remote, we also have fully office based, but then we have a hybrid. And so it's sort of understanding, for example, if you're living just outside of London, maybe commutable one or maybe 2 days a week, that maybe you don't fully go remotely, but you do that hybrid approach so that you can maintain contact with employees, with colleagues, with managers, and onboarding, you know, because there are things that are just, you know, more efficient, you know, like onboarding, like being able to have your colleague next to you to ask questions at any given time, rather than having to jump on a Zoom call, you know, Slack message, and so people are comfortable with different approaches. So I think it's just about maintaining that back and forth openness in a recruiting process, and being as open as candid as possible on what is possible and what isn't, because, you know, you don't want to promise the world and then under deliver when they join, and all of a sudden they turn around and say, hey, but the recruiting team gave me something that was completely you know, different story to what I'm seeing today, and the other way around, right? So it's just about being really open and candid, you know, with everything, not just our approach to remote working, but and the office space, but also, you know, the role and the company and the itself. So yeah, I would say it's just about being really transparent, and that's very receptive. People would rather that level of transparency, but I would say, yes, the trend has been that people have tend to now have seen that working remotely has its benefits, but then, you know, some others that maybe on the more junior end have actually, you know, opted otherwise, because they might not necessarily have, especially in London, a 2 or 3 bedroom flat. They might be living with other people, and therefore they might feel actually more comfortable going into the office where they have a setup with a couple of nice screens and keyboard and all of the things, a nice gaming PC, rather than being in their bedrooms. So it really depends.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think that brings me to my next question, actually, because as you mentioned, there's different aspects to it. So there's are people able to work from home? Do they have the right setup, let's say, at home to do this? Also, in terms of their work, can they do the job remotely, or do they require to come into the office? So different aspects. But then that brings me to the younger generation, young people, starters, people with just 1-2 years experience, new hires perhaps as well. So what does that mean for them specifically? Because I can imagine when we are comparing somebody who is starting his career to someone who has been in the field for 10 years, this is perhaps a person that is more autonomous, has more of a sense of responsibility, perhaps, So I can imagine that for young people, this might bring some kind of difficulties along with it as well, working from home. Is that the case?
Yeah. I think there's definitely some challenges
maybe a better word, yes, and difficulties.
For people that are newer to the workplace. There's also a lot of opportunities. I think for young people, this has opened up different roles and different companies that previously they maybe wouldn't have been able to apply to because they'd have to commute or they'd have to relocate, and that's not something that they're able or that they want to do. So there is that positivity there, but also there are challenges, and I think some young people will be facing the dilemma of the role that they want to do is not a role that can be done remotely, and what does that mean for job opportunities at the moment? So that's obviously a challenge there for people that are looking for roles that would be, let's say, customer facing. So that is definitely a challenge for young people, and for those that are able to find work or join companies or start their career where they're working from home. It does require some discipline working from home. You're in a place where you relax, where you socialize. And when you're earlier on in your career, you might not have perfected that skill yet of that self-discipline. So I think for young people, it's important, if you are in that setup, to ask for advice from those around you, speak to people on your team, or you've got a manager or buddy that you feel comfortable sharing, look, this is actually new for me. Like, how can you give me some advice to be successful in this company? What's the best practice? And it's also, it can be more challenging to build relationships in a new company remotely as well. So it's really important for people joining the workforce, for younger people to get that face time with their team. So even if it is virtually, making sure that if you're joining a new company that you're setting up virtual coffees with your teams, or if there is a chance for you to meet, you're both comfortable with that, and it doesn't sort of go against any restrictions, then maybe you could meet for a coffee outside somewhere or something, even if you can't go into the office. I think at Improbable, a lot of our young employees, our graduates, have never met their manager face to face. They've never necessarily worked in a software engineering company before, so that's a big challenge. And for us as an employer, we have to make sure that we're putting in the extra effort there as well. So making sure that these people are getting the support they need. And if we have to adapt our approaches, then making sure we do that. And I think for many employers, not just Improbable, it's really important to be mindful of what young people do need at the start of their career, especially if they're new to the industry or new to a company. And that means lots of feedback, reassuring them, making sure they're building a support network, getting a buddy, and understanding their own personal situation too. So I think for younger people going into the workplace, there are things to look out for. Does my new workplace provide this? Can I ask that before I join? And I think that will be helpful to making them sort of successful in this new world of working.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's very clear. I think work-life balance is becoming more and more important. It's not a fashion word anymore, I would say, and I think it depends on the company you work for, the role you have, the responsibilities you have, your personal life perhaps as well. So, yeah, I guess maybe the conclusion is that it's not the same for everyone. It depends on those different factors. Yeah. Okay, but it's good to hear that you guys, company at Improbable, is really taking that into account and is really looking into that very closely and see how to best manage that with the people you work for or you work with.
Yeah.
Okay, great. But if we have a closer look at because we already mentioned a few times young people, how they function within a company and so on, because you're talking to lockdowngeneration.org, obviously. So could you maybe elaborate a bit about how does a company work with young people? Do you have special initiative programs? Do you support young people in their career and how to progress their careers and so on? Could you tell us a bit about those opportunities or about those things?
Yeah, so we have graduate and intern programs. So these have been running for several years. So we have employees that have been with us for a number of years now who are doing really well in their careers, that joined us fresh out of university. So it's always great to see those people developing and progressing. A lot of people will come to us as an intern and then join the graduate scheme maybe a year later or 2 years later, depending on their studies. And I think this is something that for the younger generation, it's a great thing to do. You know, the more opportunities you give yourself to do work experiences or internships, the better, because it's a really good way to experiment. There's a lot of pressure on young people to know exactly, what they want to do, who they want to be, who they want to work for. So actually doing things like internships helps people to find out, what do they enjoy and what do they want to be focusing on. And they might along the way, find an employer, like when our interns come to us and then they decide to stay and we keep them on as a graduate. And there's also apprenticeships to think about as well. Apprenticeships are great because you can get this university level qualification whilst working, earning money, getting to know the world of work. And we've worked with apprentices at Improbable before. Again, would really encourage anyone any young people that are thinking about this to do your research, look at which companies are taking on apprentices. A lot of big companies have apprentice schemes, or to reach out to there's companies out there that actually will take people on and represent them as apprentices to multiple companies. So that's a good thing to do as well. I think in terms of career development at Improbable, we've got various ways to help not just our young people, but all of our employees. But these sort of things include regular peer feedback cycles, mentorship, career paths, making sure that people know exactly what they're aiming for, what their career might look like, a few years down the line, and how they need to build their skills and competencies to get there. And this is a great thing as well for people to ask about at an interview. So if you're looking for jobs as a young person, this is a great thing to ask your potential employer about. What programs, what systems do they have in place to grow your career once you've joined, so that hopefully, like we have this experience at Improbable of people meeting us as an intern and still being part of Improbable some years later. That's something to look out for.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great to hear, because I think because of the the Corona crisis, young people were hit very hard. So the first in, first out principle, people getting fired on furlough and so on. So youth employment was really youth unemployment was increasing. So I think it's very positive to hear that there is still many companies, also Improbable, out there that are really willing to work with young people, take on apprentices, internships as well, and really give career opportunities to young people. So that's very positive. Okay, great. And going a bit further on this topic. So, as I said, a lot of people unemployed, looking for a job, maybe just graduated, having more difficulty than other graduates, perhaps, in finding a new role or a career with meaning. Do you guys have any advice for those people? How they can find jobs? How they can really know, apart from internships and apprenticeships, what you just mentioned, what the field is they want to progress in? Any career advice? Basically, that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I think firstly, just to try and be positive about it, many employers they're still hiring. I think, in fact, I've seen at least the first half of this year that a lot of the companies that were venture sort of capital backed and that were maybe a little bit more risk averse, in the last 12 months of, we've got this funding, do we spend the money, do we not, do we review our headcount? They've now realized that actually, the growth is important, and actually in some cases a lot of companies have accelerated their growth depending on what industry they're operating in, especially in the technology and software space. So and a lot of them are also taking advantage of new ways of working because, we're operating, with our tools and systems in the cloud, and we can work remotely with Slack, with all these different products that are available to us, Zoom, it's easier for technology companies. So I would say, think about the industry that you're passionate about. I'm not trying to sell the tech sector, but think about, really what are you passionate about, and what are the areas that have thrived, in the time during the pandemic. You think about food services, I mentioned technology and software, and try and build out your application to stand out towards things that you really care about and that you're passionate about. So, build out your CV just like you would before, but maybe add a couple of more pieces of relevant details around, any things that you've tried to do in the last sort of 12 months, around, it could be volunteering, could be work experience, could be a course, it could be a hobby of yours that, could be transferable and relevant to different roles. There's lots of courses out there, online courses on whether it's LinkedIn, Coursera, whatever it is, programming courses that people can do. Take the time to then tailor that application, whether it's a cover letter or at least an introductory message when you're applying to a company. I think, tends to go a long way. I'm not saying that when thousands of applicants are being submitted at the same time, it's about how you can manage to stand out yourself, and use the learnings that you've made, the relationships that you made in the past, the research that you've done about the company, or, relating it to a personal hobby of yours or personal interest to really try and capture the attention of the audience that ultimately that you want to put yourself forward for. So yeah, I would say try and find things that really link to you as an individual personally, and something that you can really get behind, so that when you go fill out that application, they can feel, maybe the passion, the interest that you're going to have towards their mission, their company, or the challenges, the people that they have. Could be in many different aspects.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to really think about how you can grab the attention of the hiring manager, the HR person, and so on, because as you mentioned, it's it's difficult sometimes to stand out if 100, 200,000 people apply for one job. How do you and on top of the pile, I would say, to say it a bit not very respectfully, but that's basically where it comes down to. Yeah. So finding ways to to grab the attention, maybe think a bit out of the box. It's important. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, and I don't think you guys also have some tips for people, for example, who have interviews with you, how you would approach an interview with somebody from a company where you applied for.
Yeah, for sure. So I think just to segue from that, take the time and research. Show the passion, show the interest. Find out how their mission relates to you personally. And show interviewers that you've taken the time, done your due diligence, that you've looked at the competitors in the industry, that you understand the industry that they're operating in, the business model. But I think the next piece is practice your interviewing, and do it remotely. I get to know the tools, Zoom, Hangouts, whatever tool that's available to you. Try it out. Ask the people that you're involved in the interview process what you'll be using, so that you can get yourself familiar with that, and you don't have any technical setbacks, in that process. Prepare for the interview. Ask that same person, what can I expect? Don't be afraid to make sure that, if anything, asking clarifying questions in an interview process to try and get as much information as you can. You shouldn't be discredited against that. So, try and anticipate what you might get, whether it's behavioral interviews where you're going to be asked in a sort of STAR approach of situation, task, action, and result around past behavior and examples of situations that you've been in, which can be a bit tricky sometimes, and maybe leaning on even examples of group projects that you did at university and interactions with people that you had. That's, just as important, because ultimately future employers want to see how you behave, regardless of if you have worked in a professional environment before. If you haven't, then try and pick on experiences where, the closest possible thing is relatable. Or if not, try and talk situationally, about what you might do in that sort of scenario. But so I think preparing is important. Review your setup, like we said. Think about any possible disturbances that you might get, whether it's a delivery, whether it's the armchair to your chair that might fall off. or any dog noises in the background, animals, pets, I guess colleagues, or not colleagues, but people that you live with, housemates, and try it out. Try mock those interviews. Maybe try and look on Glassdoor. What sort of interviews have been done in the past at that company, and maybe use a friend, family, relative to practice your introduction. That's an important part of setting the tone to an interview, of introducing yourself, your background, your CV. Make sure that you have that, I guess, nice and articulate, and that you're, communicating it in the right way. And then, like I said before, try and talk to any transferable experiences that you've had. Don't be too worried about not having the experience for a junior role. Think about what you can actually think positively and draw on, from everyday life. So whether it's being a part of a sports team, or if you're applying to a particular sales role, but you've done, instead of BD, account management, that is still transferable experience of, being in front of a customer and having to communicate with a customer, or back and forth emails, or having SLAs. So thinking about how you can essentially, transfer those things.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's very valuable advice, especially like what you said about due diligence and do your research, because I think that it really shows that, because often there's a fine line between, when is a candidate accepted and when he is not, compared to somebody else, for example. So I think attitude, engagement, this sort of thing can really make a difference.
I would just add to that. Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to that. I think sometimes, companies want to know, when the going gets tough, what is really going to pull you out and keep you in that company. And I think sometimes if your interests are matched, and your values meet the company's as well, it's that means that the retention tends to be a lot easier, where people are sort of self-motivated because they have some skin in the game, because they actually want the company to succeed from a personal values perspective. So I think it actually helps on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, no, very valuable advice. Great. And something that we also just briefly touched on before was, especially for graduates, people who just start their careers, sometimes, of course, if you study software development, you probably know what you're going to do. If you're studying for, to be a doctor, you want to be a doctor. But I think there's also a lot of graduates who don't really know what they want to do in their careers. So how did you guys actually decided that you wanted to pursue a career in HR? Is that an interesting story to share with us as well?
Well, I was probably one of those people when I left university that I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I finished a master's, and my background was in environmental science. So I had done a lot of looking at, going out and doing field work and that kind of thing. And I just wanted to do something completely different. I wanted to just shake things up a bit and really learn, okay, what is it that I'm good at? Do I have any skills that I haven't realized that I have yet? Or is there anything that I actually really don't know about things like the business world? So I wanted to try something completely different. So I actually did go out and find different opportunities to my field, and I interviewed and was taken on by a graduate agency. So then they organized various interviews for me across different industries and different job fields. I actually chose my first job based on the new manager, because I found this new manager so inspirational, and I just felt like I would learn so much from her that would be a really great start to my career. And then I decided to pursue HR a few years later, which it was very different to my field of study. But at this point, I had realized that not only did this career path really play to my personal strengths and the strengths that I didn't maybe realize I had when I was at university, but I was passionate about it. I really wanted to create these great employee experiences. I wanted to help build a workplace that people are excited to get out of bed every day to go to. And I think we spend a huge amount of our lives at work. So it's really important that we don't just build and maintain a successful business, but that we create a positive culture and an environment for people that are part of it as well. So like Adrien said, I found something that I really was passionate about, could get my teeth into, and that's how I ended up working in HR. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think you're right. So I think passion is not something that people often know, in advance what they're passionate about. But I think once you find something where you can feel that you add value to a business, to people as well, because you work with people, it kind of becomes a passion, I think. So it's a good example. And also, people work for people, and people don't work for companies. So when you decided to take your first role because of your manager, I think that's a very good motivation, and a good tip for our young viewers as well. I think something they can take into account when they look for that first job, basically. Yeah. And you, Adrien, why did you decide to become to go for talent acquisition, basically?
I mean, similar, to be honest. So I studied sports science at university. Did a summer of coaching, and did a lot of voluntary work to coach football teams, and then just stumble upon sort of the recruitment sector. Similarly to Stephanie, where an agency got in touch and talking to me about technology and sports sort of recruitment roles, which were both sectors that interested me. And I interviewed a couple of companies, but similarly, it was actually and part of the same company as Stephanie, but a different manager. But someone who as soon as I met, could see the passion and the sort of that they have for their work, and were not necessarily doing or taking the same approach as everybody else in the industry. It was kind of quite a nice fresh touch of being very personalized with recruitment and really caring about experience and et cetera. So I actually went on to work for that person in that agency, but they also brought me to Improbable when we were about 15 to 20 people. And so that just, for me, I was lucky enough to build a meaningful relationship with someone and go on and work with them for pretty much almost 10 years. And it just goes to show, okay, maybe I made my own luck, but forging those meaningful relationships early on meant that someone took a chance, on me and my career, and sort of invested in me, which then created that opportunity for myself to then, persist and keep going down that route. I didn't necessarily wake up thinking, studying sports science, I really want to go into becoming a recruiter, but ultimately managed to use my own personal interests in technology, and building teams and seeing, the company grow from sort of 15 to 20 people up to, 800 now. Incredibly rewarding, seeing all the different stages of growth and, from the different parts. So I think it's really, my advice would be, always try and find a combination of what is the company's mission, what are they trying to achieve, who are the people, and what are the challenges that you can get passionate about, and try and think about those 3 points in how they affect you. They might not all ring true, they might not all be as strong as each other, but think about what you care about the most. Is it about that particular opportunity, and get behind it. Not everything is going to be perfect. There are going to be some down days, but perseverance will also help you learn a lot about yourself and a lot about other people too. So yeah, that would be my advice.
No, I think that's good advice. Go ahead.
I think Adrien touches on another interesting point as well there, that when you're very early on in your career, and you're actually building your network as well. So Adrien and I actually both started our careers working out at the same agency, then went different ways and have ended up working in the same company later in our careers. And for me, I learned about Improbable, and I was excited about Improbable because I knew someone that worked here and was like, wow, that seems like a really inspirational company. I'd love to be a part of that. So then I obviously introduced myself to the company. And I think it's really important to keep those connections, keep in touch with people, because you never know what direction your career is going to take in future. And those people could actually introduce you to a workplace or a manager or a person that's going to be really significant in your career later on in life as well.
Yeah, because it's they can tell you what it's like to work at a certain company. So that's also based on reference. It's also good to creates opportunities, basically. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. No, but I think that's very positive advice, and very positive for young people that who hear this interview, who see this interview, to know that they don't have to be stressed if they don't know yet in their final year of studies what they are going to do, or if they don't have a passion per se. So I think that's very positive. So just go out there, test the waters, and create a network, connect with people, and see what you like best, basically. Yeah. Okay. I'm very conscious of time. I'd like to thank you both very much for taking the time to talk to us. It was very insightful, very useful tips for young people, how to build a career, how to look for a job. Also good insights about Improbable. So anybody who's created an interest for the company after seeing this conversation, go have a look on the website, I would say, and then plenty of opportunities for young people. Thank you very much for this talk.
Thanks
for
so much.
having us.